Hey everyone! Over the last few weeks, I've had the opportunity to talk with investors all over the country. And of course, the top of mind topic for pretty much everyone has been how the election will affect the economy and commercial real estate. In my video last week, I touched on some of the high-level potential policy changes that investors need to consider. And I provided a preliminary perspective on how some of the policy proposals could influence interest rates. This week, I'm going to dive a little deeper into one of the prospective policies and share some thoughts on how it could affect commercial real estate investment. Now, as I mentioned last week, we don't have any clarity on the implementation of any of the policies discussed on the campaign trail, so I'm speculating a bit. But we have seen some of President-elect Trump's proposed nominees for several government positions, which offers some insights into what the actual policy agenda could look like. And the area I want to focus on this week is immigration. A significant change in immigration policy will have a resounding effect across virtually every facet of the commercial real estate sector. Now for this video, I want to set aside the prospect of deportations. Deportations would be a whole other level, and it's not something we have good historical reference points to use in framing an economic and commercial real estate perspective. But we do have some good reference points on how a more restrictive immigration policy could affect things. We only have to look back to President Trump's first term in the White House. During that term, President Trump initiated some policies to mitigate illegal immigration. But the rhetoric also affected legal immigration to the U.S. To set an economic baseline prior to the change of immigration policies, in 2015 and 2016, the U.S. economy grew at a relatively healthy pace of 2.9% and 1.8% respectively. Not too far off the current consensus forecast for 2024 and 2025. The unemployment rate was 5.3% in 2015 and 4.9% in 2016, with an average labor force participation rate of 62.7% over that span. For the key 25 to 54 age segment, the labor force participation rate averaged 81.1%. So, the unemployment rate was a bit higher than the 4.1% range we're at today, but the labor force participation rate was comparable. The overall participation rate in September of this year was 62.7%, and the participation of 25 to 54-year-olds in September was 83.8%, higher than in 2015 and 2016. So there's less slack in the labor market today than there was in those 2 years. At the end of 2016, we had an election, President Trump won, and in 2017, the immigration climate began to change. In 2015 and 2016, we had just over 1 million legal net immigrants come to the United States each year. In 2017, after the change of administration, the total fell to about 950,000. Then in 2018, the total fell to 720,000. Then 570,000 in 2019. In 2020 and 2021, the total number of legal net immigrants fell further, but that was during the COVID pandemic, so it makes sense that immigration would be lower in those years. Nonetheless, in 2021, we had another change of administration, and in 2022, legal net immigration was back up to 1 million, and in 2023, the total legal net in migration reached 1.1 million. The reason I walk through all those numbers is this. As legal immigration to the U.S. fell, the labor shortage intensified. And as the labor shortage got worse, the pace of wage growth increased, and that was inflationary. So, here are some thoughts on how immigration policy under the Trump 2.0 presidency could affect commercial real estate. If the policies put in place under the new administration weigh on legal immigration to the United States, it could put downward pressure on the unemployment rate and spur increased wage growth. And in specific areas of our economy, we would expect the impact to be outsized. Overall, 19.3% of the U.S. labor force is foreign-born. But the share of foreign-born workers is much higher in specific employment sectors. About 37% of agriculture workers are foreign-born. The construction sector's share is about 34%, and both food services and the healthcare sector employment bases are about 24% foreign-born workers. These types of businesses would likely be most impacted by restricted immigration policies, and they're the segments of the economy that would likely face increased inflationary pressure. That could mean higher development costs. It could also pressure retail businesses, particularly service-oriented and experiential retail. Hospitality operations and investments could also be impacted, as well as seniors housing and medical services. And the Federal Reserve will likely consider the risk of these potential inflationary forces when they set interest rate policies, and that could impact the cost of debt capital for all investors. I'm not saying this will happen. We still don't know what policies will be put in place or how they'll be implemented. But I am saying that if immigration policies become restrictive, it could weigh on the performance of several commercial property types. And it could put upward pressure on inflation that in turn keeps interest rates higher for longer. And those are important considerations for investors who keep their eyes on the horizon.